What is up, my friends? Welcome to a brand new economic report. I know it's been a while, but we are back in business, baby, and I got something juicy to share with you today. Now, I've been digging around some IMF stuff, and I've been keeping an eye on this whole digital currency switch. You guys know I love cryptocurrencies in general, so I've got something really interesting to share with you, and we're gonna go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different links here, and we're gonna go through 4 different written pieces by the IMF or economists and researchers that are putting forth concepts and ideas for essentially a workaround for the upcoming crash. Now, there's such widespread talk now of a severe recession and being able to recover from the next recession. And it's literally being worded like this: global financial crisis, the next global financial crisis. We know that one is coming. This, which was just recently published on February 5th, talks about essentially a bail-in through a decoupling of cash and digital currency or e-money or electronic money. And it's actually going to allow them to get into negative interest rates, which they can't right now because zero acts as the floor and cash is king. So you can't go much lower than zero, even though a few countries have. This reminds me of this piece. This was written all the way back in 2015 about the 2013 Cyprus bail-in. Now, essentially, to make this long story short, they closed the banks down for a certain amount of time and then just decided that they're going to take 20 to 30% of all of the Cyprus residents' money in the banks and keep it, because it's for the public's good. They're doing it for the people, and they're doing it so that they can keep going and that they can keep this game alive. Those of us that have been in this space long enough, we realize that a lot of the money system, if not all of it, is really just a delusion. Back in 2000, well, it started in 2006, but the 2008-2009 US bailout, I really wish they would have just let fractional reserve banking die right then and there, and quantitative easing measures and fractional reserve risks would have never gotten so out of hand that they are now. And what we're dealing with now is a result of the bailout that occurred in 2008-2009, instead of letting that aspect of capitalism die and recycling it into something new. Because there's so much panic and so much fear, they were able to get away with that. Well, the same thing happened in 2013 in Cyprus. Here's what's interesting that I read in this, because I didn't actually follow this. You know, I wasn't really back in following economy and economics back then, so I didn't really know. In the last 24 months, Canada, Cyprus, New Zealand, the US, the UK, and Germany have all implemented legislation that would allow them to first freeze and then seize bank assets during the next crisis. What this means is that they are going to take more of your hard-earned money. So if it wasn't enough that you get taxed, if it wasn't enough that you get capital gains tax now on your cryptocurrency trading and taxed at all on your cryptocurrency trading, they would be allowed to do this as well. I didn't look up to see what the number of this bill was or what the actual bill or thing that was put forth was actually called, but I'm just taking this at face value. You can go ahead and dig deeper into research if you'd like, or if you don't trust or like zero hedge, okay? These moves will be sold as for public's good when they happen, but the reality is that anything stopping people from moving their capital into actual physical cash. I do agree with this from a few different standpoints. I do think that, you know, the government is out for itself, and the central banks are then at this whole different other piece over here that are out for themselves. The federal banks and the Federal Reserve and the IMF and all of them are kind of working together to a degree, but all at the end of the day out for themselves. They have stakeholders, they have people that they need to be held accountable for, too, so on and so forth. So anyways, here is the quick timeline of how everything went down in Cyprus. Bail-in deal agreed upon on March 25th, 2013. Those depositors with over 100,000 euro either lose 40% of their money, Bank of Cyprus, or lose 60%. Laki, I think it was called Laki. Cash limits of 100 euro and withdrawals began, largest bank in Cyprus. Remember this, to prevent bank runs. So, and this is really a fear that a lot of countries have, but to put it into perspective, in India, there's bank runs that happen almost every single day, at least on a weekly basis, but they're not big bank runs. What it means is that banks run out of money, and so there's lines that start forming at 2, 3 a.m. where people get in line for the bank to open at 8 or 9 so that they can then hopefully pull out cash for that day. That is why throughout India, a lot of Middle Eastern countries and even Asian countries, instant sending services or close to it, like Western Union, MoneyGram, etc., are very, very popular. But the fees are actually insane with some of this stuff. You can pay upwards of $100 to send $500. Let that sink in for a second. So anyways, now you're up to speed on what happened with Cyprus. This is reminding me a lot of that. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, remember we talked about this Winds of Change case for new digital currency that was published November. We're actually going to go back into August of 2018, but let's start here. So we started at the end. We went back to 2013, brought you up to speed on Cyprus. Now let's talk about this, which is Christine Legrand, who's obviously gotten herself into trouble with the 2016 matter where she literally got away scot-free without charge and did not go to jail. The IMF stood behind her, and then with recent kind of scandals going on, she's locked in with the IMF and is not going away anytime soon. This is the second point that I want to bring up here. Is in this, she covers three topics, okay? First, frame the issue in terms of changing nature of money and the fintech revolution. Second, evaluate the role for central banks in this new financial landscape, especially in providing digital currency. So let's jump ahead now. Should central banks issue a digital form of money, a state-backed token, or perhaps an account held directly at central banks, available to people and firms for retail payments? True, your deposits in commercial banks are already digital, but a digital currency would be a liability of the state like cash today, not of a private firm. This is not science fiction. Various central banks around the world are seriously considering these ideas, and we actually know this to be true because Iran is actually doing a crypto-backed state-released currency of their own, digital currency. We have JPM coin, which literally got released in this last week. Well, not released, they're testing it with, I believe, their institutional clients to allow for quicker sending between bank branches. This is the first step, I believe, to what they were starting to talk about and hint the public on back in, this goes back as far as August, but some of the original stuff of getting rid of the dollar and getting rid of the currencies go back to 2003. There's two topics we're talking about really, is getting rid of cash and fiat, and then digital currencies. And digital currencies, I think, really started taking off in conversation in 2018, especially publicly. Maybe they were having these conversations privately, but that's besides the point. Okay, I believe we should consider the possibility to issue digital currency. There may be a role for the state to supply money to the digital economy. This currency could satisfy public policy goals such as financial inclusion, security, and consumer protection, and provide what the private sector cannot: privacy in payments, which is a big topic that's still talked about right now, which is why custodianship is a big deal. We have Fidelity coming into the game. We have Bakkt, BAKKT, that's launching, looking to launch in March if they get full approvals, March of 2019, which is just next month. It's just interesting, and this goes into much deeper detail, but I noticed that when I link this stuff, like, nobody reads it. So that's fine. Read it if you like. I'm kind of nerding out on this stuff over the last year or so, so I actually enjoy reading this because the verbiage that they use and how they say it is really telling of the direction that they're going. To me, this is like indication of things that they're already working on or already planning on doing. They're just now telling you about it. And that's not me being a conspiracy theorist at all. It's just if you look back throughout history, this is kind of how it works. They start talking about it, but they've already been working on it, and then next thing you know, poof, it's there. There's this piece, and then we need to also cover a piece that was talked about here, which is IMF staff study, which is monetary policy with negative interest rates decoupling cash from electronic money. This was released August 27th, 2018, which is this piece here. You can actually buy it for $18. I don't know why you would buy it, but it's right here, and I've actually been reading through this, and I'm gonna give you a breakdown of this in just a minute, which is all related to this piece here. And there's this second piece that I actually found as well, which was written way back June 2009 that I was digging through to see if I could find anything related to digital currencies, and I don't know if I could find any sleight of tongue, I guess, for anything talking about digital currencies, because this is right around, this is just before Bitcoin actually launched. So I know that there was talks before that. There was digital currencies before this, before Bitcoin actually launched. I'm well aware of that, even though it's not really that widely talked about. But anyways, this is one of the older conversations about removing fiat and decoupling that. But what I do want to quickly point out is that before this, even this piece was talked about, large-scale asset purchases or phasing out cash to allow allow for substantially negative interest rates. Blanchard 2010, Williams 2017, Stephenson, is that Stephenson? 2003, Ball 2016, and Rogoff 2014. Kimball 2015, 2007, Goodfried 2016. These are all pieces that have been written before this, essentially talking about removing cash so that we can dip down into negative interest rates. So I just want you to know that and realize that this isn't some new topic. This has actually been discussed and debated for quite a long time, as you can see all the way back, documented in this piece alone to 2003. There is older pieces to that, but all of that relates to this overall blog post that I want to talk about with you here in this video. So hopefully I didn't lose you too much, but essentially what they're talking about is how do we go into negative interest rates? And the problem is that you need to be able to have a buffer of 500 base points, and that would only put them at two countries, Turkey and Mexico. Iceland would be acceptable if we went with just 250 base points as maneuvering room, but that's not usually the standard because we need to have a 3 to 6% drop if there was some sort of recession or crisis that hit, okay? So most countries are not prepared for this, and that's where they start to introduce essentially like this bail-in method, which is where they decouple an e-money from cash itself, which all this is tying in beautifully, you notice, with all the other things I've been talking about on this channel about how there's going to be, how I feel there's going to be this worldwide cryptocurrency rolled out. Now you could go on some slightly more fringe concepts and ideals about New World Order, One World Order, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. Substantially obvious that they want something similar like that, and then maybe each central bank has kind of its own internal digital currency like JPM coin, and that helps with the depositors and helps at a institutional level kind of move around quicker. I don't know the role of what SWIFT would really play in that, because in my model and in my mind, what I've been kind of putting together is I think they're going to use Ripple as the digital currency, and they'll still allow Bitcoin to exist as well. And Ripple's just got way too much to lose. I'm going to finally shoot the video. We've been putting together all the information on just all the synchronicity and I guess you could say crazy stuff with Ripple and why I feel that they're super vested in that and it will not go away. But I believe at the grand scale, their best option is Ripple right now, XRP and the different RippleNet and the different subsidiaries of Ripple Inc., let's call it, that are going to be able to be rolled out at a global scale. They've been testing for a really long time. It seems to be the front runner for what they would roll out. We need to move past, like if you're still thinking like, no, they're not going to do a digital currency, they're going to keep cash around. No, it's actually in their best interest from a fighting crime standpoint, money laundering standpoint, but also trackability standpoint. It seems coincidental that this digital currency distributed ledger technology rolls around at perfect time to be able to track literally everything they want to track and keep a really tight grasp on everybody's spending and dollars and across borders and international play here. They will need cash for at least a while of time after they roll out this global currency, but I do believe that they are going to roll out a digital global currency. So anyways, okay, let's get into the next part here, which is essentially talking about the role of cash. It still seems to be king. Sweden and Norway have really taken the boldest steps towards removing cash out of their countries, but a lot of countries this just isn't possible, right? Cash still plays an important role, whereas I think it's oftentimes demonized and they try to victimize it and claim that essentially, you know, drug dealers are using it, tax evaders are using it, it's used for money laundering. I actually think that it's also now more importantly used because if the electronic grid goes down in any sort of way, which we just saw about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, Wells Fargo went down for an entire day. It was all over Twitter, big deal. And then we saw Chase Online go down for about 12 hours just this last week. So those types of situations happen all the time. We've got like this weird blend right now between digital and cash. At least if you had cash in your hands, you could do something with it if the power grid went down, right? But they don't actually really talk about that much at all. In this piece, I want to talk about and break down the cash side of things. So Sweden, Norway here shown again. This is just a better graph. GDP in 2017. Okay, rather than decoupling cash from electronic money, it would arguably be much simpler to phase out cash altogether, right? Which would achieve many of the same advantages in terms of allowing monetary policy to operate below the lower bound. This is really the whole conversation that's happening, is how do we allow negative interest rates without there being bank runs, without having to seize assets, without our people completely flipping their shit out and losing their minds. Where if they kept cash and decoupled it from electronic money, then they would actually be able to allow it to fall and rise in concession with e-money of some sort. However, while some countries, notably Sweden, are quickly heading in a direction of cashless society, other countries remain strongly reliant on cash, as shown in figure 2 and 3. Here's this level in 2007. Percent of GDP. Cash currently serves 3 key uses in our societies. It plays a key role in retail payments, used for storage, hoarding of banknotes as a means of savings, and it's used for tax evasion and illegal activities. That one cracks me up. And so Rogoff in 2014 puts forth the argument that the first 2 can be handled in a digital currency format or electronic format, and that really we're trying to avoid the third one, which is illegal activities and tax evasion. Illegal activities is an important reason for central banks to consider phasing it out. An added benefit to phasing out cash, he argues, is that society without physical currency has no lower bound on nominal interest rates. Again, like, let's not pretend here. They pretend that it's tax evasion and illegal activities. No, it's that there's no lower bound on nominal interest rates. They can go as low as they want. Cash remains important in retail payments in many countries, however. For this reason alone, central banks with mandates to promote the stability of payment systems will be reluctant to phase out cash activities. Beyond the stability of payment systems, there are institutional and cultural reasons why some countries may not be able to do away with cash, at least in the near term. That cash payments are anonymous is seen in some countries as important for ensuring the right to privacy. I would agree. Another key property exclusive to cash is exactly that it is not electronic. If the electronic systems break down, cash is still usable and hence provides a hedge of the retail financial system against electronic disruptions. This has turned out to be of high value in areas plagued by natural disasters that interfere with electronic networks. Preparations for natural disasters, in fact, often include securing the provision of sufficient cash stocks. Finally, if cash is abolished, the decision would be difficult to reverse, whereas in a dual local currency system, all payment instructions that are in use today, in principle, could be continued and be used on forever. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here is, and I want to give an example. So the proposal for central banks to divide the monetary base into 2 separate local currencies, cash and electronic money, e-money. E-money would be issued only electronically and would pay the policy rate of interest, and cash would have an exchange rate, the conversion rate against e-money. This conversion rate is key to the proposal. When setting a negative interest rate on e-money, the central bank would let the conversion rate of cash in terms of e-money depreciate at the same rate as the negative interest rate on e-money. The value of cash would thereby fall in terms of e-money, which I don't think a lot of people understand what this means. Essentially, if they set, to illustrate, suppose your bank announced a negative 3% interest rate on your bank deposit of $100 today, okay? And they also did this for cash dollars. What that would mean is that your e-dollars depreciate by 3% each year. So this year it's 1-to-1. Next year it's from 1 to 0.97 that you would have left. So you'd have 97 e-dollars left. This is another form of taxation, I guess. I mean, I just don't understand why we have such different names for all the same thing. They're taking your money and doing what they want with it. That is a taxation of some sort. You know, like, people pretend that there's no inflation in the United States. To give you an example, I went through LAX not too long ago, and the regular, well, it wasn't the regular water, but the high, like the good water, was $5.20 for, I think, 500 mils. Let that sink in. I paid $3.90 for a fucking water. Let that sink in. Remember, like, when water bottles first came out, like, everyone was kind of confused, like, why would we drink this water? Why don't we just drink it from the tap like we've always been doing? And then everything started coming out that the tap water was shit. They put in a bunch of stuff in it, which was always true. And then it's like, okay, well, I'll drink this plastic water bottle stuff. And then nobody really realized the ramifications of all the plastic because it's still all here. But anyways, my point is simply that all used to cost $1. None of them were over $1. And now there's like 18 different designer brands. Boxed water costs like over $3. The water that they sell in a box, the milk carton box, that costs, I think, over $3. If you buy the shit at Whole Foods, it costs even more. It's just another way to rob Peter to pay Paul, which everyone else is demonized for doing that, right? And you're basically considered financially illiterate if you operate in that sort of way. But doesn't the government do the same thing? I don't know. That one always gets me. That's what they're talking about. This is just another way of depreciating, let's call it, to fluctuate interest rate numbers to make their numbers okay, because they don't want to compress their interest rates. They don't want to lose their interest rates at all. That's what's essentially going on here. Pros and cons, they break down some of it here, but this is a much better piece to actually read. It's just 31 pages, pretty quick. It actually references a lot more pieces at the bottom of each page too. It references quite a bit. I think it will bring you up to speed on a lot of maybe things you didn't know. I think the problem is that they even put out a piece like this and it's like, I think 99% of people don't even understand what's going on. They don't even understand that there's depositors and in them, and that there's different pieces with stocks and bonds and cash and how all those fit together in this quote unquote free market and what interest rates really represent. It's just I guess a mind fuck a little bit, because what it is that they're keeping the inflation rate, quote unquote inflation rate, low from a number standpoint, but that's not stopping inflation. So just because like you can reference this stat that in my country I only have 1% inflation rate or 0% inflation, it doesn't mean that it's zero. I don't know. I just wish more people understood a lot of what's actually going on here and what's at play. But I find it convenient that we have this digital money that comes out of nowhere with this mystery person, Bitcoin. Nobody knows who made it, can't stop it, can't shut it down, which that is true. And then out of it comes blockchain technology, which is private, yes, but once you've given away your address, then it is, you know, public, and you could be your online activity would be footprinted. But distributed ledger technology came out of this as well, and as long as that's open and available for people to download in some sort of fashion, then all the transactions are recorded and it creates this much more transparent, trustable system. I find it really interesting that and convenient that all that kind of comes along at this perfect timing when the financial system, which we all knew 10 years after 2008, 2009, historically it's every 10 years there's a recession. We're there now. Expect something big to happen here now, and we have this perfect substitute to keep fiat going and then also move into some sort of e-money, some kind of global e-money, which I'm banking on it being Ripple. I've been talking about this for a while, especially in our private community. I tend not to say it so much on the channel because the whole community around Ripple is very strange to me. It reminds me of how the political landscape is now, especially in America, and how like everything on social media flows so quickly in the political space, and it seems to flow equally as quick in Ripple, which is again a weird coincidence to me, but it doesn't for other cryptocurrencies. Like Ripple's literally the only currency that behaves that way, to where if I hashtag something out right now, I will have tens of comments and hundreds of comments within a matter of minutes and hours, like either cheering me on if I'm pro Ripple or telling me that I'm the worst person in the world if I'm anti Ripple. And I've seen this happen on other channels, so I find it very interesting that that's now operating very similarly to kind of how the political landscape is with mob mentality. Anyway, I think the global currency, the best in line is going to be Ripple. But now in terms of when this is all going to happen, I'm thinking Q2, my friends. I hate to say it so simply, but it's kind of like this. They'd shut the lights off. They're going to tell you that they're going to shut the lights off. They might shut the lights off a couple days or a week. And then when they turn the lights back on, e-money. There you go. And we've got this dual system rolling. That's how they would have to do it. That's how every single bail-in has happened historically throughout time, is literally the same way. They go and meet in some sort of way, and it's like a blackout for the rest of the world, and then they come forward and say, hey, we got a plan, and this is exactly what we're gonna do. You have no say in this, which I also think is an interesting concept, because don't the American people pay for all the mistakes and all the things that the US government decides to do? Of course they do. It's through taxes. So wouldn't they have a say in it? Shouldn't there be some sort of like open board that is like regular people that haven't been bought out or lobbied in any sort of way or given any money, and they're just like there to actually kind of represent the people? They've been voted in by the people and they stay there by the people. Coincidentally, that's what our government is kind of supposed to be doing, but we can't really trust that anymore, especially when it comes to monetary policy. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now. Guys, that's it for this video. I know we went a little bit deep into some areas that might not have made a lot of sense to you, but I would urge you, like, just read even these 3 documents. You'd understand so much more by just reading these 3 that I linked to underneath this video. All the links will be underneath there. If you want to support this video and my ramblings, just simply hit the thumbs up button. Yes, it's that simple. If you got something to say, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Place a comment. If you're brand new to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification. That way you get more of our notifications when we launch new content. And if you want to support us financially, which we always love as well, $1 goes a long way. Like, it really does. There's options with Patreon. You can buy some merch underneath if you like the designs. Cool, support us. We make a couple dollars on every single one of those, and I believe Patreon literally starts at $1 donation. That does go a long way, especially with our research and everything that goes into some of these videos. Much love, my friends. Be on the lookout for more content dropping soon on the channel. Bye.